I was 84. I had lived in this nursing home for 3 years, and there was something nobody warned me about. Not the social worker with her clipboard smile, not my grandson when he helped me pack, not even the pamphlet with its smiling seniors playing bingo. It wasn't the bland food or the constant smell of antiseptic. Those things you expect. The real theft happened slower. They didn't take my freedom all at once. They took my choices, one by one, and made me thank them for it. My name is David. I drove a mail truck for 42 years. Same route every day. I knew which houses got bills on Tuesday, which got magazines on Thursday, which widow waited by the window for her daughter's letter from California. I knew the weight of a birthday card versus a tax notice just by the envelope. Good work. Quiet work. I bought a small house with a backyard big enough for tomatoes. My wife Jessica died 12 years ago. Cancer, slow kind. I stayed in that house alone after. I thought I was managing. I made my meals, paid my bills on time, still walked the 3 blocks to the post office most mornings just to feel useful. Then the forgetting started. Small things at first, where I left my keys, whether I'd taken my pill. Once I left the stove on all afternoon. The neighbor smelled it, came over, turned it off. She didn't say anything, but I saw it in her eyes. A week later, my grandson Mark sat at my kitchen table. He stirred his coffee 3 times after adding sugar. He said we needed to talk about my safety. Safety, that word again, like it was a cage built out of concern. He showed me brochures, clean rooms, smiling staff, 3 meals a day. I told him I was fine. He asked if I remembered turning off the burner that morning. I didn't. So we came here, Oak Haven. No oaks, no haven. But the linoleum shone under the fluorescent lights. The first month I kept making decisions. I'd choose which sweater to wear, which chair to sit in during activities. I'd say no thank you to pudding. But the system had no place for no. The aides would gently redirect. Let's wear the blue one today, David. It's easier for us to help you with buttons. Dinner's in the dining room, dear, not by the window. We need to keep the exits clear. Everyone eats what's served. It's better for the kitchen staff. I stopped saying no. It was easier, less friction. I became grateful for small permissions. You may have an extra blanket tonight. You may stay up until 8:30. I thanked them each time. That was the real victory for them. I thanked them for scraps of autonomy I'd once taken for granted. There was a woman named Eleanor on my wing, 91. Every single morning she put on her pearls, her best dress, and sat in the lobby from 9 until noon, waiting. Her son had promised to visit next week 3 years ago. He never came, but she kept waiting. The staff humored her. Your son's running late today, Eleanor. They never told her the truth. They let her dress up and wait because it was easier than breaking her heart. Or maybe because a waiting woman was quieter than a grieving one. She died last winter. They found her in her room still wearing the pearls. I wondered if, in her mind, she'd finally stopped waiting. Then there was Robert, 89, sharp mind trapped in a body that wouldn't obey. He'd been a carpenter. Hands that built cradles and bookshelves now trembled too much to hold a spoon. One afternoon I found him by the front door in his slippers, coat over his pajamas. I'm going home, he said. My wife's making meatloaf. His wife had been dead 20 years. The aide caught him, spoke softly, walked him back to his room. Didn't scold him, just said, "Let's get you settled, Robert." He went quietly. That was the saddest part. He'd stopped fighting. He'd accepted that home was a direction he could no longer travel. 2 weeks later, he had a stroke. When he woke up, he couldn't speak. But sometimes his eyes would lock on the door and his good hand would twitch. Still trying to go home. Still trying. And me. I lost my voice in smaller ways. They scheduled my showers for Tuesday and Friday mornings. I'd always showered at night, felt cleaner for bed. I mentioned it once. The nurse smiled. "We have to work with the schedule, David. Think of the other residents." So I showered in the morning. They served coffee at 7 sharp. I'd always been a slow waker, liked to sit with my thoughts before caffeine, but 7 was 7. I drank lukewarm coffee while staring at a wall. They decided when I ate, when I slept, when I went outside, all for my safety, all with kindness. And I became a man who said thank you for the removal of his own will. My grandson visited every other Sunday. He'd bring donuts. We'd sit in the common room with its fake plants and motivational posters. He'd ask how I was. I'd say fine. He'd tell me about his promotion, his new apartment, his girlfriend. I'd nod. He never asked what I wanted. Why would he? I was fine. I was safe. Once he brought his girlfriend. She patted my hand and said, "You're so lucky to be so well taken care of." I wanted to tell her that being taken care of and being seen were not the same thing, that you could be perfectly safe and completely alone. But I just smiled, said thank you. That's what they teach you here. Gratitude as surrender. I thought about my years on the mail route, how I chose which porch to approach first, which dog to avoid, how I'd sometimes delay a letter with bad news until afternoon, give the recipient more daylight to absorb it. Small choices, human choices. I decided 1,000 tiny things each day without even noticing. Now I decided nothing. And the strangest part, I'd started to believe I no longer needed to, that my preferences were a burden, that wanting anything was selfish. There was a man named Walter who arrived last spring, former lawyer, sharp as a blade. First week he questioned everything. Why this medication schedule? Why no access to the garden after 6? Why couldn't he keep a small radio in his room? The staff called him difficult. Within 2 months, he stopped asking. He sat in his chair and stared at the television. I asked him once what changed. He whispered, "I realized they hold all the keys, not just to the doors, to everything, and arguing just makes them sigh." He'd learned the lesson faster than I had. Survival meant shrinking. Compliance meant peace. I remembered Jessica near the end. She'd lost the ability to choose her words. The cancer took her speech first, but her eyes still decided. She'd look at me when the nurse was too rough. She'd close them when she wanted to be left alone. She still had that last frontier, her attention. Here they even take that. They interrupt your thoughts with medication reminders. They pull you from memories with activity announcements. Your mind becomes public property. The worst moment came last October. My grandson brought my great-granddaughter, 3 years old. She ran to me, arms open. I reached to hug her. An aide stepped between us. "Let's make sure she washes her hands first, David. We don't want to spread germs." The child cried. I sat back in my chair, and I didn't protest. Not because I agreed, but because I'd forgotten how to claim what was mine. A hug from my own blood. I'd surrendered even that. I used to think dignity was about being clean, being fed, being safe. I was wrong. Dignity is the right to choose poorly, to wear mismatched socks, to skip a meal, to sit in the rain if you want to feel it on your face one more time. They took that from me and called it care. They took my will and called it peace. And I helped them do it because the alternative was being labeled difficult, ungrateful, a problem. There's a woman down the hall who hoards sugar packets, fills her drawers with them. The staff cleans them out weekly. She starts again the next day. I understand now. It's not about sugar. It's about having something she decides to keep, something no one can schedule or sanitize or take away without her noticing. It's the last choice she owns. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it wouldn't be about spending more time with family or chasing dreams. It would be simpler. Guard your small choices fiercely. The time you take your coffee, the chair you sit in, the route you walk home. Those aren't trivialities. They're the architecture of a self. Lose them one by one, and one day you'll wake up in a clean, safe room with everything provided and realize you've disappeared without anyone noticing, without even a struggle. They'll say you're comfortable. They'll say you're loved, and in their way, they will mean it. But love that removes your voice isn't love. It's custody. Care that erases your preferences isn't care. It's management. And safety that costs you your will isn't safety at all. It's the quietest kind of death, the one that happens while you're still breathing. I died last Tuesday. The last thing I remember was an aide adjusting my blanket. She called me David, but she didn't ask which way I liked it tucked. She just did it her way, and I was too tired to care. That was the final theft, not the breath leaving my body, but the last flicker of wanting anything at all. I had become perfectly, completely safe, and in that safety I had vanished. Don't let them take your choices. Not even the small ones, especially the small ones, because once they're gone, you won't miss them. You'll just become grateful for whatever they give you, and that gratitude will be the proof that you're already gone.